Honorable Spencer Brand to present a slideshow which drills down and gives some greater details as to this project. And thereafter, we hope to get into the questions and answers from you, the members of the press. So thank you all for being here. For those who are on their way, we hope that your steps will be hastened and that you will be safe. And we look forward certainly to this very, very important engagement. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning. It's a lovely morning. Today, we are indeed delighted to present to you the proposed Destiny development on the South Coast. And the presentation will be, of course, in 4 sections. We will highlight very quickly the team credentials, the site plan and visualization, the environmental impact, economic impact, and of course, we will also share with you some answers to some frequently asked questions. The project team, we would have heard the name Oliver Jensen, who is the founder and investor. We have also heard the name of Graham Brooks, who is one of the project lead. We have also Stephen Carvin, who is the Chief Financial Officer. We have Georgina Atkins, who is the Chief Sales Officer. We have Ben Hudson, who is the Chief Operation Officer. We have Professor Tom Bell, who is a civil.
Next slide is now who's controlling the slides.
We have Professor Tom Bell, who is a civil and constitutional law consultant. We have Professor Mark Baer, OBE, who is a judicial systems and ADR consultant. We have Professor Eric Luna, who is a criminal and constitutional law consultant on this project. We have Andreas Buchgardner, who is a SEZ governance consultant. And we have Dr. Dawn D. Ketu, who is a Commonwealth law consultant. The architectural firm who are being consulted on this project is a firm named SOM, who is Skidmore, Owens, and Merrill, and they have been in existence since 1936. Their history would show that they would have designed 1 in every 250 square feet of built property in the United States of America. And that is significant. When you think of the expanse of the United States of America, here is one design firm that have designed 1 in every 250 square feet in the United States. They have received many awards, well, 6 awards from the AIA, that is the American Institute of Architects, for 25 years. They would have done some 10,000 projects in over 50 countries. They have had 87 years of innovative design and 2,200 international design awards. The project team also include WSP, civil engineer and infrastructure engineer consultant. They have, as a part of their team, Ryder Levitt Bugnall, who is the cost estimate, what we will normally call the quantity estimators. They have as well marine engineers, as their marine engineer and coastal engineer, H.R. Willingford. They have Deborah Brosnan, who is an advisor. They have as well, for the marina projects, who is going to deal with the marine design. And they have Crabtree Group Inc. as one of the advisors as well. To the site plan, that is a pictorial view of what the site is expected to look like. And we are hoping that that will be maintained during the entire phase of their construction. They will be using a number of design principles. And they will be designing with nature, and Destiny works in harmony with the site's topography. And this is important because they have stated very clearly that all of their buildings will be low-rise, so they will be designing with the topography in mind. They also will be designing as family-oriented neighborhoods, in that their design will be very intimate, very family-oriented, and there will be neighborhoods throughout the entire development of the Destiny proposed development. Of course, they will also be designing with resilience, and we know that we are in a hurricane and earthquake and tsunami zone. So of course, they will also be designing with that parameters as well. And of course, they will be designing with planning for flexibility. And the master plan, of course, will be organized in such a way that it can be adaptable and there can be some modification and changes as they go along. The next slide will give you an indication as to what the present site looks like. You can look at the coastline and you can see that there is significant erosion on the coastline. You can also depict from the pictures there is really no buildings or no habitat in that area. The next slide, which is the master plan, gives you an idea as to what is being proposed in terms of the master plan. There are different components in the master plan that we will expound on a little later. The master plan is subdivided into 4 sections, and that is proposed that there will be phased construction. That is why they would have had 6 different zones. The next slide gives you a depiction of what is proposed to be seen once you enter from the ocean side, approaching Destiny. If you notice that there is no sky-rise buildings, everything is nicely tucked into the landscape. The next slide would give you an idea as to what the residential neighborhoods would look like in terms of their design concepts, what is proposed as it regards to the features of their buildings and what is expected to be seen. Next slide. This gives you an idea as to what the neighborhood amenities will be. There will be retail shops, there will be health facilities, there will be sporting parks, clubhouses, hotels, lawn areas. I have also noticed that there will also be a cricket field, so those of us who hope to get back into some cricket, like Alexis when he was much younger, when he was representing Nevis as a cricketer, we can also try and rekindle that once again. There will be some sailing clubs, hotels, playgrounds, clubhouses. All of that will be a part of the Destiny proposed development. The next slide gives you an idea as to, again, another feature of the development. As you enter from the coast, this is a pier that they are proposing to be attached to the development where persons can arrive. Marine district, there is supposed to be a marine district, and as you know, Nevis is an island that is circular in shape. We do not have any natural egress on the island of Nevis where we can construct any marina, and they are proposing that they will actually create a marina as part of the Destiny development. In terms of the marina area, they are proposing that there would be at least 2 hotels in that area. They are also proposing that they will create some beach area in that area as well. The next slide would give you an idea as to the depiction of what it would look like in the marina area. I now go to the environmental impact. And as part of the protection of our environment, one of the significant features of this development will be coastal reef and ecological habitat restoration. And that will be important in terms of protecting the coast and regenerating our fish life and fish stock in the area. They are also expected to see some improvement along the coastline and some beach restoration. Those who know the area recognize that there are a number of large guts in that area, and guts are natural features will create enhanced habitat and refuge for the local habitat. There will be some mangrove forest restoration. The next slide will have to do with clean and safe water management. One of the things that we have said to the developers that the island of Nevis will not necessarily be able to provide water for their development. So they will be erecting a water treatment plant. They will be able to create some ponds and retention areas to provide water for their development. They also intend to do some lakes and integrated water management, stores rainwater and filter runoff systems. One of the key component of this proposed development is that they are proposing that they will ensure that they have 100% self-sustainable water across the entire development. So that is some good news for us. The next slide would depict the clean energy infrastructure. And as part of their development, they are hoping that they will be able to put some photovoltaic canopy over all of the utility buildings and also over the border areas, or what we would probably call road areas. They also intend to put photovoltaic panels over the villas and any building that is really on the site. They are hoping to ensure that they have photovoltaic supply on those buildings. Another component of their development is that they intend to partner with the Nevis Island Administration on our geothermal project so that they too can benefit from our geothermal development. Resilience, as I said before, you know, we are in a hurricane, earthquake, and tsunami zone, and they will be ensuring that their architectural and engineering design standards would meet the necessary earthquake and hurricane requirements. The environmental commitments. Destiny will generate its own energy and water, aiming to be 100% sustainable with a commitment to 70% within 10 years. And that is absolutely critical. Up to 90% of solid waste will be recycled on site, with the rest shipped overseas to avoid straining the landfill. And that was a question that I believe was raised last evening. Rainwater capture, they expect to create 100 plus acres of reservoirs, which will help refill the island's aquifer, create new habitats, and increase diversity of fauna. All electric vehicle fleet will be as part of their development, and that they are hoping will be powered by the geothermal and solar power. Regenerating the southern reef will support hurricane resilience, beach formation, and increase, of course, our fishing stock. The economic impact. It is proposed that the development is estimated to generate a total economic output of $33 billion locally on Nevis and $18 billion on the island of St. Kitts, giving a total of $50 billion. Their contribution to the GDP, 29 billion. Their total job year supported approximately 345,000. Let me back up a bit. The total economic output, approximately 50 billion. The total GDP supported is approximately 29 billion. Total job years supported, 345,000. And the total tax generated. And let me put a caveat here. This is within a 10-year period from 2026 to 2036. The annual average economic impact of the proposed development, the total economic output, 4.6 billion. The total GDP supported, 2.8 billion. Total job supported, 31,400. And the total tax generated, $117 million. We expect that there will be a significant contribution across all sectors of our economy, in agriculture, manufacturing, of course, utilities, construction, wholesale and retail, transportation, just every sector of our economy is expected to be impacted by this proposed development. We now move to the direct commitments. And the direct commitments to the Nevis Island administration in the first instance is 50 million guaranteed revenue for Nevis over a 5-year period. And this is proposed to be spent on the hospital, on also the Long Point Port development, and of course any other proposed projects or development initiative that the Nevis Island administration may wish to put forward. We expect that there will be a 20% profit share for Nevis, and that will be for the life of this venture. 10% will go directly to the NIA, and 10% will be placed in a sovereign wealth fund. $1 million on an annual basis will go towards the scholarship fund for the education of our children. 5% profit share will go to locals, as locals will also benefit directly. One of the other initiatives will be the obligation secured via lien on developers' properties to enforce strong performance, key performance indexes. Now, we have had many questions that have been asked thus far throughout this process, and one of which has certainly been Destiny will remain open. Well, whether or not Destiny will remain open to the public, and that will be the case, that Destiny will be open to the public, including our beaches. We have made it very clear over many decades that all of our beaches on the island of Nevis are public. We have also had significant discussion about the various historic sites, and it is the intention that those historic sites will be preserved, and they, of course, will be accessible to the general public. Land sales are compulsory, voluntary, sorry. Let me make that very clear. Let me make that very clear. Land sales are completely voluntary. Anyone who does not want to sell land will be able to keep it, or as in other cases, they can do land swap. For the first phase of Destiny, will be approximately 400 acres. The maximum size, if all current landowners in the area would agree to sell, would be approximately 2,670 acres. 1,500 acres of these lands are currently owned by just 10 individuals. Or companies, and we all know that there has not been any development in those areas for many decades. We are also happy to see that there have been strong interest from Nevisians and Kittians to purchase property in Destiny. This is not only a project for, as you would say locally, foreigners. I believe that it is important to highlight as well that the Nevis Island administration has not signed any agreement or any deal as yet. We are still in the negotiation phase, and of course any deal will have to be passed in the parliament before it is finally approved. The SSD Act passed on August 11th actually restricts government from signing deals without public scrutiny and meeting strict requirements. If the government wanted to give special concession to Destiny, it could have done so with a dedicated Destiny Act in August instead. Destiny will pay damages up to $75 million if it fails to meet strict commitments, including construction and capex timelines. If it fails to pay these damages, any land in its possession will be forfeited to the government and people of Nevis. Destiny will lose its SSD status if it does not meet its commitments and deadlines. The government would also only owe damage if it terminates Destiny's SSD status without good reason. The This, this protects investors and property buyer confidence. Any damages would be based on Destiny's costs for less than $75 million today. Land, Destiny expects to remain open to public, including its beaches. Sorry, I gone back. Oversight. Destiny remains fully bound by the Constitution of St. Kitts and Nevis. It cannot and will not be a state within a state. And I believe that there has been a lot of chatter that it is, but our Constitution will have overriding supremacy in the Destiny development. Like many special zones around the world, Destiny will have its own internal rules and regulations, but these must be and can only be approved and enacted by Parliament and remain subject to national law. I think that that is absolutely important. For comparison, the Dubai International Financial Center has its own courts and regulatory systems while operating under the sovereignty of the United Arab Emirates. Similarly, Destiny courts and security remain fully bound by the Constitution of St. Kitts and Nevis. Importantly, under the jurisdiction of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, the Privy Council, and our Director of Public Prosecution. And we now entertain any questions from the media.
Excuse me, for questions, I see PS is not at his usual position. So let me just say that for questions, when you stand, could you please go to the microphone, identify yourself, and then pose your questions. Yourself and the media organization you represent. Thank you.
Good morning to all. Shamika Bajin, Von Radio. Can a person who has economic citizenship be registered to vote? If no, are you at liberty to say if anything will be put in place to allow these individuals to vote? Question 2. Is the NIA cabinet satisfied that the general public is adequately informed about the Destiny project? And this one goes to the Premier. Can you, Mr. Premier, state to the public if there are any consequences, so to speak, if this project doesn't come to fruition? Thank you.
Ms. Maloney, thank you very much. I think the slideshow answered your last question. Ms. Budgeon, sorry. What am I saying? Ms. Budgeon, please forgive me. I think the slideshow answered your last question. There, of course, are consequences. What has happened is that over the years, we have seen a lot of unfinished projects all across St. Kitts and Nevis. And we are in a situation where oftentimes there's very little the government can do. And these projects are simply abandoned in some cases, and they mar the landscape. So what we are seeking to do, Ms. Budgeon, is to ensure that we learn from those mistakes and we build in performance guidelines and penalties every step of the way. So while it is still being negotiated, the agreement contemplates that it will have timelines. So these developers must do certain things by a certain time. And if they fail to do it, there are consequences that flow in terms of penalties and payments that they would have to make. But that is a matter that is still under active discussion, but that is currently the proposed mechanism to keep them accountable. In relation to, are we satisfied that the general public is informed enough? When I hear a question like that, I'm not sure how to answer it, because there has been nothing being discussed in this country for the last, I would say 2 months, 3, possibly. SSZ, they say, is more popular than ABC. Everybody's talking about SSZ. Everybody's talking. So I am not sure myself. As a government, we recognize that there's been a concerted effort from some quarters to give misleading information. And so we appreciate that there's some level of confusion out there. We have seen diagrams where half of Nevis is is designated as the proposed zone. We have seen allegations of no access to the beach, no access to fishing. We've seen a number of things, state within a state, all kinds of things are being said. I actually, sometimes people look at these things and they despair. And they say, this is really not good. I see it as democracy at work. And democracy is not always nice and orderly. Sometimes a bit raucous. Some may say a bit messy. But at the end of the day, I think that we ought to be proud that in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have the right to state our minds and to state our opinions. Even when those opinions may be based on falsehoods, we are still able to voice our views. And sometimes I feel that we forget to be grateful because it's not so in every country. And so I get a lot of licks, the cabinet gets a lot of licks, but I still celebrate the fact that people have the ability to give us licks. Because I think that's democracy at work. And when we sign up, we know that we engage in a dynamic process. In terms of information, I've outlined that we have had a number of meetings already as government. We have been engaged with the public through various media. We have talked about this through speeches and various engagements. But in terms of consultations, we have thus far met with the business community, the banking sector, the churches, and we're talking about meetings that were very well attended, the tourism stakeholders. We met in this very room with the members of the parliamentary opposition, shared with them the information, took their questions. We have met with the police high command again in this room. They voiced their concerns and made their recommendations. We are continuing to have those discussions with everyone. We're having this meeting now. Last night we had a packed house at the Anglican Church Hall, and this week we hope to meet with a standing room only at the Anglican Church Hall, I'm told last night. And then tomorrow, is it tomorrow, Thursday? We meet with our sixth formers and our youth. We meet with our contractors and heavy equipment operators. So the reality is, Ms. Budgeon, we are trying to saturate the island in terms of discussions and engagements. All of these discussions now, just like today, are going live. People are out there, they're able to listen. In fact, someone shared with me last night that at that town hall, we had over 1,000 people on the live. So people are paying attention and we're trying our very best. I will go on record to say that no development in the history of Nevis or St. Kitts has had this level of public discussion and consultation. None. No government has ever come to the people as we have come in this way. And so when I hear some allegations about secrecy and lack of information, my view is some who are saying they don't have the information, I don't know what they're searching for. Because even when you give them the information, they resort to, oh, that is misleading or you're not telling them the truth. So maybe they just want to hear what they want to hear, as opposed to the actual information. In fact, I was very surprised to learn that there were efforts afoot last night asking people to boycott the town hall. And I said, well, how is it that people are asking to boycott and at the same time asking and saying they don't have information? If information is to be made available, then you must attend, you must listen, and you must inform yourself. So we are trying everything we can. I will also emphasize, as Minister Brand said, that this development is the first of its kind in terms of openness and transparency. Why? Because this agreement has to be made public. Not if, not but, not maybe, not dependent on any of us here, but by law. Under the relevant SSD legislation, it mandates, at Section 7, I think it is, that this has to go to the Parliament. And in the case of this development that is proposed for Nevis, it has to go to the NIA, that is the Nevis Island Assembly, and it then has to go also to the federal parliament. So this process that we engaged upon now is really at the very early stages. I say that to say this, that any agreement that we as cabinet were to say, okay, we are comfortable with, we have then to signal that to the federal cabinet. The federal cabinet then has to say they're comfortable with it. They signal that to us. We then have to go to our parliament to pass a bill into law, which incorporates the agreement. And if you know how our parliamentary process operates, that bill would be circulated, there will be a first reading, there will be a pause, and then we go back to Parliament at some later date for a debate and a second and third reading. I say all that to say that nobody in Nevis is going to wake up one morning and find that we have created a zone. It is legally impossible to do that. And so a lot of the remonstrations that people have been making are simply not true. They're based on fantasy, not on fact or on what the law requires. I will go further, as I did last night, and say that we have had a Four Seasons in Nevis for 35 years. I don't know about you, Miss Budgeon, but I have never seen the Four Seasons agreement. It probably is in some drawer somewhere. But the Nevisian public has not seen the Four Seasons agreement. We don't know what was ever agreed 35 years ago. We have not seen the Crystal Harbor agreement, Park Hyatt, Marriott. This is the first time in history that this agreement has to be made public. And I find that sometimes people are not sort of emphasizing that point enough. If we're talking about transparency, this is the first time in our history that a major development has to have this level of public scrutiny. All the others we've done in the past, there's an agreement somewhere in somebody's desk, but the public has never seen it. And there has been no outcry. We have Four Seasons there for 35 years. I've never heard anybody saying that it was done in secrecy. It is just, I think, the next evolution in terms of transparency and openness, and I wanted to emphasize that. The last question is a fundamental question. That is the issue of people voting. It is an issue that I know worries the people of Nevis, and it worries us up here. Some of us up here are elected politicians, but I think all of us are, well, not legal advisor, but all the rest of us are well, not cabinet secretary. You're a politician, Tracy? No, you said no. So the reality is that we have, Ms. Budgeon, politicians up here at the table, and I think that we understand the dynamics of the politics. And we understand the concerns. Someone said to me that you all are bringing in all these 10,000 voters to make sure the opposition can't win. That is not the case. We have been very clear, and in fact, is one of the first things that Prime Minister Drew said when he and I spoke about this matter. They cannot have any right to vote. And so we have insisted on that, but it begs a larger question. And that is the question I think you have posed. What about economic citizens that are out there in the world today? So forget about destiny for the moment. Let's say destiny did not even exist. We have over 50,000, based on estimates that we've seen, St. Kitts Nevis citizens who have obtained citizenship through the Economic Citizenship Program, which has been in existence in our country since 1984. What if those people decided tomorrow to come home? Because they have our passport, and Ms. Budgeon, they have the same rights as you and I. Same St. Kitts Nevis passport that you have and that I have, they have. So, in a way, we have been living with this potential for a very long time. But what destiny has done, it has forced us to confront it. Because destiny is the first time that we are saying, listen, we are talking about a residential neighborhood where people are intended to come and live amongst us and reside here. And the proposal, as I've seen it, is that we will amend the National Assembly Elections Act. That will have to be done in the National Parliament. But that is my understanding that that will be the approach, and that amendment will ensure that provisions are made for those individuals who are economic citizens and also those individuals who will be living inside the Destiny Zone. And we are going through the details of that, but we anticipate that you should see something fairly soon. Because whether Destiny happens or doesn't happen is frankly not as important to the question you have posed. What about those citizens that we already have? Now, not everybody in Destiny is going to be a citizen, but they will have the right to apply if they so desire. But I'm simply saying that we already have a Damocles sword hanging over us in a way because of these tens of thousands of citizens that currently exist. So we have to address that problem. And I think what Destiny has done as a good thing is to expedite and act as a catalyst for the public discussion on that matter. But we have been very clear, Ms. Budgeon, that these individuals who are being given the privilege of coming here and living here, that they should not have the right to vote for obvious reasons. Because when we look at the size of our population and the size of our voters list, then they would have a disproportionate impact on any election. And that is not something we want. We want to ensure that elections here continue to be a vote by the people for the government of their choice. And when I say by the people, I mean the people of Nevis and those who have the right to vote who have come from other parts of the world in circumstances where they are CARICOM residents or Commonwealth nationals, as the case may be. So I just wanted to be clear on that, because that is a concern that was addressed from the earliest stages of these discussions, that there could be no right to vote. And we would want to address that frontally and directly, that that is non-negotiable so far as we are concerned.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Bjorn, and I am a YouTube content creator. I react to breaking news that affect the Caribbean region and Africa. I also have a travel channel, and it's good to see the whole cabinet here today for the first time in the history of this government. Have me a little nervous here because there's so many of them. I have two questions, one for the representative of St. George Gingerland and another for the Premier of Nevis. I just saw a beautiful video, not a video, some pictures of the proposed zone, and we know large tracts of land in Gingerland will be a part of the sustainable zone. By looking at the image from the outside, the first image when it gives you a good view of it, it looks to me that that project stretches all the way from Long Point. It looked to me like you're heading up towards Butler's area. By the look of that image, that's what it looked like to me. Because you know the map of Nevis, and if you look at it, you can see the vast amount of lands that will be destiny. Now, in Gingerland and St. John's will be greatly affected. In Destiny, in Gingerland, large tracts of lands have been sold already, and they will have a community, a residential community inside of Gingerland. So my information is that they will have their own water inside there. Well, these residents will be wealthy Europeans and Americans mostly, and it will be thousands of them living inside a zone in Gingerland. They will have their own water, their own electricity. They will be tax-free. They will have their own security. They will have other special privileges, like they're not gonna pay any land tax, house tax, none of that. They're gonna pay, and they're gonna have everything in there, living in ultra luxury. You would have seen the pictures already. And just outside the zone now, where...
Mr. Hanley, I don't want to interrupt you, but is there a question?
Yes, the question is coming.
Oh, okay.
Just outside the zone now, you will have residents of Gingerland, like the villages of Rollins, Hanley's Road, Zion, Clegot, Chickenstone, Rices, Hickmans, the regular villages in Gingerland, living outside of the zone. And outside of the zone, we would have seen the number of dilapidated, can't even call the word now, run down infrastructure, government infrastructure in the constituency. The Gingerland Public Market, the Gingerland Hard Court, the basketball court, netball court, no lights is there. It is in a state of disrepair. The Hard Times playing field, I was playing cricket there the other day, no lights. I was there and it was darkness. You have the public library over there, abandoned for many years. We have a house right next to the police station, abandoned for many years. The health center on the main road, abandoned for many years. Horse race track down at Indian Castle is now a dumping site. The cattle farm. The question is coming.
So you're eating up the time, Mr. Hanley, with a speech. This is intended to be a discussion on the SSZ for us
Yes.
to share information. There will be other opportunities, no doubt, for you to give a speech.
Yes.
But please, we are looking to get into the
question is here.
questions. Well, if the question is there,
I
bring
can't
it.
just ask questions
No,
randomly.
but
So I have to
you're
give
going
a
along with a
background.
half-an-hour speech before you can ask a question. That can't
The
be
question
acceptable.
is
There are other
coming.
members of the press here
Yes.
who would like an opportunity as
The
well.
question is coming
Well,
now.
please bring it forward. Let us
So
deal with the question.
my point is, outside of the zone, we will be living, because I'm a resident of Gingerland, we live in dilapidated conditions outside of the zone. And then inside of the zone, you have thousands of wealthy residents in there living in luxury, tax-free, free water, electricity, all of that. My question is, can the representative of St. George, Gingerland, let us know his big idea for the economic development of Gingerland outside of the zone, and approximately how much acres has been sold already to Destiny inside of the zone. See, that's this question. You see how simple it is?
Yeah,
And
but
I have
it
another
took
question
you half an hour to get to that one. So could you ask the other one as
the
well?
next one is for you now.
Okay, so could
Mr.
you ask
Premier.
that one quickly as well so we could take
will
note
be
and
very
be able
quick.
to answer? Grateful.
My
Thank you.
question will be very quick to you. Destiny, you mentioned it will be approximately 10,000 residents living in Destiny. Those residents will be citizens of this country. And as a citizen, the Constitution says you can vote and you can run for office. So in the future, you're saying Destiny people will vote for CCM. I am saying they will have enough. You're saying that's one of the fears, but what I am saying now, no, you're saying that is one of the fears, but what I'm saying now, with 10,000 citizens inside Destiny, they have the money and everything, they can form their own party and run their candidates and win easily and take over the country easily. You are saying that you will wake up one morning and change the constitution to stop citizens of this land from voting. For over 40 years, you would have said not even a comma the governments in St. Kitts and Nevis could change in this constitution. Not a full stop. Nothing that changed in over 40 years. And you are telling us you're going to wake up one morning and you're going to change the constitution of St. Kitts and Nevis to ensure that citizens of this land do not vote. They will be citizens. If somebody from down the islands and people who don't live here can come and vote, surely citizens living here can vote and run for office. So my question to you, Mr. Premier, is how do you propose to change the constitution of St. Kitts and Nevis to ensure that citizens of this country do not vote? And yes, it is. Finished for now.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I have to say that I'm a little disappointed, Mr. Hanley, because I think you have insulted the people of Gingerland to say that we in Gingerland are living in dilapidated conditions. That is exactly what you just said a while ago, that people in Gingerland are living in dilapidated conditions. I don't think you are living in dilapidated conditions, neither am I, and I don't think there hardly anybody. You said people in Gingerland are living in dilapidated conditions, sir. All right, anyway. And you spoke about the hard court in Gingerland, you spoke about the playfield up at hard times. If there are no lights on the playfield, that does not mean that the conditions are dilapidated. There was recently a cricket competition there that I sponsored, and the teams were able to play their cricket. So if they were able to play their cricket, it can't say that the conditions are dilapidated. Not having lights does not constitute dilapidation, right? So you probably need to qualify and quantify what you mean by dilapidation, because if the conditions do not have specific lights or any other amenities, it does not mean that they are dilapidated. With regards to, you said that a large portions of lands have been sold in the Gingerland area. I am not sure how much of the land that's will be used for Destiny will be sold for the Gingerland area. What I can tell you, the last tally that we had was that 68% of the target of the lands have been sold. You also said that the person you also mentioned as well, which is, I believe, some misinformation. You say that most of the persons who will be living in his zone will be wealthy Americans. We don't know who we don't know whether they will be Americans, Europeans, or where they're going to be coming from, because we are not the ones who will be promoting the development, and we are not the one who's going to be selling the units that are there. So we cannot come and say that most of them will be Americans. We are not sure. You said that wealthy Americans will be living there, Europeans will be living there, and we in Gingerland, who will be living outside of the zone, will be living in dilapidated conditions. You also mentioned that apparently, based on what you saw from the slide, that the zone is going to stretch all the way to Hickman's. That is Butlers. That is absolutely false as well. The specified area that we are looking at is going to run from the Long Point area to border the Indian Castle Orchard. And so, in essence, we are not going all the way over to Hickman's and Butlers as you suggested. The map did not suggest that either. Right? And so, we want to just qualify that and make the record straight that the zone will not stretch to Butlers. Okay?
Thank you. You want? No?
Mr. Hanley, I want to add a few comments as well to your questions. You indicated that in the zone, people will have their own water, own electricity, and own security. If you could recall, this is a special sustainability zone. I want you to focus a bit on the sustainability part of what we are trying to do. And in sustainability, it means that you must be able to provide certain basic services and important, well, essential services. Two of those essential services, water and electricity. I would add a third, waste management. So if you were to look at the Special Sustainability Zone Act, it speaks very specifically to anyone who is applying for a special sustainability zone to be able to provide those essential requirements. So it is not that we are saying to the rest of Nevis that here it is, these developments would have free electricity and free water and ways in which that they can dispose of their own garbage, while the rest of us have to. It is called a special sustainability zone for that specific reason. I believe my colleague would have also dealt with the scope of the development. I think he answered you that you said it take up all of Gingerland or something like that. My colleague would have dealt with that, so I don't need to go into that. You also spoke about change the constitution overnight. And I marvel when you spoke about change of the constitution overnight. I believe that you are old enough to know that some years ago, the island of Nevis, you are older than the constitution. Well, you see, more power to you. We would recall that on this island, the people of Nevis sought to enact a particular clause in the constitution. And I believe that you are astute enough to know the challenge and the difficulties that we would have encountered in changing or enacting that clause in the constitution. None of us up here can change any constitution of St. Kitts and Nevis overnight. That can't happen. It is a very high bar that has been set for any change in the constitution to occur. And as you said, you are old enough, as old as the Constitution, to know that changing the Constitution overnight is not something that can happen easily. So I would leave that there.
Just before the Premier comes in, I just wanted to just strengthen the point that Minister Brand just made with regards to the water and electricity, because the law provides that. It is the law mandates that they must provide their own electricity and water. And the electricity, of course, I think 70% of it has to be renewable. But the good thing about it is that because of the fact that they have to provide their own electricity and their own water and so on, and their own waste disposal, it creates no pressure on those sections for the government. And so the government will not, there will be no pressure on the water supply that the government has for the divisions and residents of Nevis. No pressure on the electricity grid that we have as well, and no pressure on the waste disposal that we have. Just wanted to highlight those. Minister, Honorable Premier.
Let me continue from where my brother Eric left off. He said no pressure, but I think that I have been trying to use the analogy with the Four Seasons Resort, which is a significant development that came 35 years ago. And what I would say to the people of Nevis and to members of the press here, the government, the taxpayers of Nevis provide electricity, they provide water, and they provide waste management for Four Seasons. Now, the average Nevisian may not know the pressure that that creates on our system, but I could tell you, when we have, for example, water difficulties, one of the big problems we have is the extent of water that the Four Seasons consumes. And that pressure is entirely on you, Mr. Hanley, and me, to provide that to the Four Seasons. We have learned from all of those lessons. And so one of the things that we are now saying is that, listen, if you come with a big development, you must put in your own. You must basically provide for yourself, because the people of Nevis should not carry that burden. So we can look at this as the way you've tried to characterize it, as a bad thing, that the people have their own water and their own electricity. We look at it, and we look at it as a very positive development, that the pressures that would ordinarily fall on the taxpayers of Nevis have been removed. And that is what we're talking about, sustainability. It will be for them to provide what they need to provide. Now, I understand, Mr. Hanley, why you're saying that the zone goes from Butlers, because you started that particular misleading statement. I think I saw you draw a green line about half a Nevis, and you distributed that on your widely watched YouTube channel. And it was on YouTube? Okay, so you only try to mislead people locally, not internationally. Because that map, I said, I'm so happy you put the line in green. Because, yes, I did. I said, I'm happy that you put it in green. So, the reality is that the zone is nothing to do with butlers and those areas. And we need to just stop peddling these types of claims. If we're going to have a credible, sensible debate that befits our stature as an educated public, I think let us get rid of all the efforts to mislead people, and let us get down to the brass tacks of what it is proposed, and get legitimate feedback in terms of how we can negotiate something that is better for the people of Nevis. So that is really where we are. In relation to those lands, I have said repeatedly that the lands have attracted a lot of recent attention. In fact, some people are discovering all kinds of things on those lands. I'm told the only thing left for us to discover now is gold, frankincense, and myrrh, because everything else is suddenly new. And what it tells me, I actually smile, because it tells me that a lot of people who are talking about the south coast of Nevis actually know nothing at all about that coast. They're visiting it for the first time. And many of them are activated by certainly political persuasion and politics, because they're going over there, they're seeing it for the first time, and they're acting like they have discovered nirvana. The reality is that those lands have stayed over there for a very long time. Last night there was a debate from one member of the audience whether it's 100 years or 50 years. But whether it's 100 or 50, they've been over there for a very long time with zero economic activity. And so we have that quadrant of the island which has not been performing in terms of adding to the jobs, to the economic advancement, or to any of those for the island of Nevis. We now have an opportunity for a development which will transform that area. And the lands that are in that area, as you would have seen from the slide, almost 1,500 acres of those lands are in the hands of just 10 people. So there is a lot of chatter about, oh, we're losing our lands. 1,500 acres is in the hands of just 10 owners who have done absolutely nothing with those lands to develop those lands over the years. And so we have to look at it, and we can, of course, decide we don't want any development over there. Let it remain as it is. And if that is the decision of the people of Nevis, then so be it. But I have an obligation, Mr. Hanley, to the 200 plus young people that will be coming out of school next year. When they look at me and they say to me, well, Premier, what are the opportunities for us? What am I going to tell them? Go over there and walk about, put your foot in the water over there. That is what I'm going to tell them? Or I'm going to tell them that this is a government which is trying to get development so that they could have a future. When youngsters like yourself, Mr. Hanley, go away and study, would you not like to come back to opportunity? Well, you did that already. Well, we want more to do it. We want our people who are overseas, the first, second, and third generations, to come home, be a part of what we're doing. How do we create that? How do we encourage our own people to come and lend their energies for the development of Nevis? I see a lot of people now have a lot of opinions. But you know the one thing I notice some of them aren't saying? That they're coming home. They're sitting down wherever they're sitting down in America, and they're trying to tell us here what we should and should not do, but not one of them is saying, I'm making plans to come home to Nevis and to be a part of this island. I'm just been handed a note here to say over 1,000 students will be out of school over the next 5 years. On an average of 200 plus a year. Over 1,000 in the next 5 years. What am I going to do? When they come to me and they cry and say they don't have jobs, am I going to cry with them? No. This government, this cabinet must provide opportunity for them. And whether it's destiny or it's something else, we cannot constantly have this fear-mongering and be afraid of development. The island has to move forward. Now, Mr. Brand has attempted to answer you about the Constitution. And Mr. Brand is a very tolerant fellow. Because the way I wanted to answer you, Mr. Hanley, is to ask you to explain to us at what point did the Premier of Nevis ever say that we will be amending the Constitution? I've never said that. Right? Whether overnight, I have never said anything about any amendment to the Constitution. And that is why, going back, Ms. Budgeon, you ask, are the people of Nevis satisfied that they're getting information? Sometimes you're talking, but people are not listening to learn. They're listening to respond. If anybody has been paying attention to what has actually been said, Mr. Hanley, we are talking about an amendment to the National Assembly Elections Act. That is not the Constitution. It is the National Assembly Elections Act, which sets out who can register, where they can register, and all of those considerations. And what we have said to these developers is we have a concern not only about your potential residents, but also about the economic citizens that are currently out there. That if they were to be able to come in and vote, the result would be, as you have described. They can swamp the system. They can overnight transform the system. You don't want that. I don't want that. And so we have said to them very clearly, that is non-negotiable. That is the posture of the government. And I can reference Premier Drew because he also said that his position is that is non-negotiable. That is why we're discussing going into the Parliament, Mr. Hanley, to amend the National Assembly Elections Act, not the Constitution. So please, as a journalist, YouTuber, get the language right, get the facts straight so that you don't mislead yourself and you don't mislead others. And don't say that I say things that I know nothing about. We are seeking to amend the legislation which governs the right to vote and how voting rights are exercised in the country. That is legislation that is passed in the National Parliament, and that is legislation which can be amended in the National Parliament. So I hope that this is the last that I hear of things that I supposedly said, but which in fact are fantasy. So let us proceed, as I said, on a fact-based discussion. I think that is very important for the country. People are tired of all the misleading rhetoric. We're here as a government, entire cabinet, and we are here to share factual information with you and with the members of the press. Thank you.
Before the other person comes to the microphone, I just wanted to add something as well. The Premier mentioned that, of course, we as an administration, we must be able to provide job opportunities for our students who are coming out of school on an annual basis and other persons who live here. Of course, as well, we must recognize that ever since the COVID-19 pandemic, this administration, as well as the administration in Bastia, has been saying that there is the need to diversify in terms of how we provide jobs and what we can do to provide more opportunities for our people. And so this Special Sustainability Zone Act is just another way in terms of providing other avenues in which we can provide some economic growth in Nevis and, of course, in St. Kitts as well. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, we realize the nature of the tourism industry. We realize what happened with the tourism industry when COVID-19 pandemic passed. And so, of course, this administration has been doing things in terms of its diversification. We introduced the film industry. And of course, as well, we have to be online gaming. We have to bear in mind as well that the Citizenship by Investment program, we know have had some problems recently. And that has been the engine for St. Kitts and Nevis over the past years. And we must, at some point in time, try as much as possible to do some diversification. And so this SSZ is just one aspect of the diversification that this administration is trying to implement.
Good morning, Devon Cornelius, ZIZ Broadcasting Corporation. Just a quick follow-up from something you said earlier, Minister Evelyn, and then two questions. You mentioned that about 68% of the lands in the area have been sold for the proposed development. Could you clarify the acreage? So what does the 68% equal to in terms of the land acreage? And my two questions, going back to the presentation by Minister Brand, when he made mention, well, the presentation made mention of scholarship opportunities. What are the priority areas for the scholarships, and what is the government's plan to ensure that the prospective recipients of these scholarships come back to Nevis? So instead of saying, you know, come back home, take up the jobs, what will be the government's approach to ensure that when persons get these prospective scholarships, they do come back to Nevis and contribute to our development? The second question, I'm not remembering who, but someone made mention of, I think it was you, Minister Brand, of damages. So if the development doesn't come through on Destiny's end, I think you made mention of about 75 million US dollars or something like that. Then you mentioned that the NIA would face some sort of damages if the development were not to come to fruition from our end. Could you clarify that? And what are those damages that the NIA would possibly face if the development doesn't come through on our end? Thank you.
The quick calculation in terms of the 68% of the targeted area is just about 1,700 acres. That's the answer to the question.
In terms of the scholarship and priority areas, the Nevis Island Administration on an annual basis publish various areas that they would encourage our children to apply for scholarship. We have, I honestly can't necessarily remember all of the areas, but we have areas in healthcare, we have areas in engineering, IT, agriculture. You know, those are areas that I feel, in technology, Those are areas that we feel can be the engine of growth in our economy. You also asked about how are we going to ensure that they return home to the island of Nevis. It is our hope that we will ensure that there is a bonding mechanism. I know that is something that the government would have used over time, where they receive these scholarship and they are bonded to the island for 5 years, 10 years, whatever the period is. But that is one of the mechanisms that we are hoping that we'll be able to use to ensure that these persons who are recipients of these scholarship can return and help us develop the country.
Just a quick follow-up, if I may.
Sure.
So I know if you get a scholarship from the NIA or the federal government, whichever institution you're bonded to, that institution.
No,
Only to return.
you have to return to the country. Yeah,
Country.
yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. So the scholarships that would come from Destiny, you're bonded to the island. to the country.
Yes, yes, yeah. You take the next one about the.
In relation to the question you asked about penalties, the approach that the proposed agreement seeks to take is essentially to say that they do not, of course, wish to make this investment and have the government thereafter tell the people basically to go away. We don't want you in Nevis. And so the penalties that they propose for the government, if we were to repeal the zone, they propose a formula of 2 times the capital expenditure plus the cost of the real estate. Of course, we can't quantify that at this point because if it were to be done today, there's been no capital expenditure and the cost of the real estate would be, I suppose, the 1,700 acres that they have contracted to purchase. We have seen some wildly inaccurate numbers being pandied about. I think $20-something billion. That is, again, one of the falsehoods that some have engaged in with quite a degree of glee as they've tried to mislead people. That is simply not accurate. On the other side, basically, what these developers have been saying is this, that all the obligations to perform are on them. They have to put in their roads, they have to put in their water, they have to put in their electricity, they have to put in their waste management, they have to restore the reefs, they have to do all that. And they have to build out the homes and the various hotels and all of that. And all of those in the agreement have what we would call timelines. So put differently, they're saying that the agreement as it is structured puts the onus on them to do all of these things and to do them by a certain time. The only onus on the government side is not to repeal. So they're saying, listen, in terms of risk profile, the risk to them is exponentially greater than the risk to the government because the government is not being asked to spend or invest any money. So if this thing were to move forward, the only obligation on the part of the government is not to repeal the legislation. Now, if they were to walk away, so let us say they come in and after a year or two, they decide that this isn't going well and we want to walk away, then the current provision that is there, which I should add is a matter that we are still negotiating, is that they have a $75 million penalty. Now, let me be clear that there are penalties built in at every step of the way. So if they don't meet a deadline for their roads, I'm just drawing a reference. If they don't meet a deadline for their water treatment, then there are penalties built in. But if they were to decide tomorrow, you know what, let's just walk away entirely, then we built in a penalty thus far, which is, let me emphasize, still under discussion, of $75 million secured by land. So put differently, if it is they were to walk away and they don't pay, then the government will take the land up to that value of 75 million US dollars. So that is the current discussion that is happening in relation to that. But on the penalty on the other side, that is from the government to them if the government were to repeal the SSZ legislation. That is difficult for me today to tell you a number because there's a formula for calculating that. So if we were to repeal it 2 months after this agreement were passed into law and the zone came into effect, they may not have spent very much in terms of capex, right? Capital expenditure. They may not have spent very much in terms of anything else. And so we're really only talking about the cost of the land at that point. If, however, we repeal it after 20 years, when, of course, you have a fully developed, then clearly you can see that the cost would be exponentially greater if a government in 20 or 25 years were to decide at that point that they do not want these people here and they want to get rid of them. So the idea really is for us to, and that is one of the reasons why we have said that we need proper consultation with our people, one, and two, we need proper ventilation of any agreement that is engaged into with the public and certainly with the parliament, because everybody has to understand what it is we're doing, what the implications may be going forward. But I want to make it pellucid that these numbers that were being bandied about all across the media, that they are categorically false. That is simply not the case. And at this juncture, those provisions are even now still being actively negotiated. So I just want to make that point, and I hope that I've answered your question on that issue adequately.
So you said that the risk on their end would be greater than for ours, as in Nevis or the Nevis Island Administration. But you mentioned that the more time so if there is to be a repeal, the longer it takes, the greater the risk. I'm just trying to understand. So if we repeal, if there is a repeal 10, 15, 20 years from now, it means that the price tag, for lack of a better term, would continue to increase, which suggests to me that the risk may be greater on our end than theirs. And could you clarify if the $75 million would remain the same for them 20 years from now? Thank you. That's it.
So I understand, but perhaps I wasn't as clear as I ought to be. Clearly, if in 10 or 20 years that project is there, then it means that that project has been wildly successful. Because it means that the benchmarks that are built in have been met. They put in their water, they put in their electricity, they built their homes, they built their roads, and all of that is there. 20 years from now, we should have a thriving community there. So you're right that the cost, because it's capex, it's capital expenditure. So clearly your capital expenditure in year one, or in 6 months, let me use that, should be a lot less than your capital expenditure in 10 years if you continue to invest in that development. So I don't see it as the risk being greater, because by then the people of Nevis should already be seeing significant benefits from this zone in terms of jobs, in terms of all the spin-offs that we anticipate in the economy. So when I said about risk profile, I want to be very clear, so I'm not misunderstood, that the reality now is that because the developers have to come out of pocket for all of these, remember, as I said, unlike, say, the Four Seasons, or unlike the Marriott, or unlike Christopher Harbor, we have not had to put in any infrastructure. So there is no risk in that sense, financial, to the taxpayer of Nevis in terms of having to upfront money to pay for water, or roads, or electricity for them, or waste management for them. They have to upfront that money themselves. And so, really, as I said, the obligation on the government is just don't repeal the legislation. That would be the fundamental breach that the government could do, to basically kick them out. And if that is the case, and as I said, if it's done immediately, we are on the hook for the cost of the land, essentially. If it's done years down the road, then hopefully by then the development would have clearly developed roads and infrastructures in, and so the capex cost would naturally be higher. So that is the formulation of how it is done. If they were to walk away 20 years from now, the penalties on the government side, as currently proposed, would remain the same. That is, that they would pay this amount or forfeit lands to that amount, 75 million. But again, if you think about it logically, 20 years from now, why would they be walking away? Because 20 years from now, you should have a fully developed project. You should have a fully occupied, fully developed project. I think the way that we have looked at this is not even 20 years. If in the next 5 years we don't have the level of activity over there, then naturally the project would have failed. And if the project fails, then that is where the penalties start to bite. And again, I emphasize that if they don't meet guidelines, standards, and timelines, then the penalties bite as well. So we have tried to build those in, Mr. Cornelius, simply because we have realized that other projects around the island and around the country have stalled. I shouldn't say failed, they've stalled. And there is no recourse by the government. So if you drive around, you see projects that are simply abandoned or look abandoned, the government has no recourse. And many people call me, oh, what are you going to do about this project? What are you going to do about that project? And the truth is that we do not have the recourse. So we've tried to build in to this recourse for the government and for the people of Nevis, including the forfeiture of land. So when I've said currently we don't have any land over there, we had 238 acres at some point, but that was swapped under the land for debt swap back in 2012. We, if this were to happen, would have access to lands as part of the penalty. That is assuming they don't come up with the cash. We have the right to take lands. So that is the current formula, but I hasten to say, by way of conclusion, that that is a matter that is still under active discussion between the parties. So we are not yet at an agreed position in relation to that. So what I've tried to do is simply to outline what the thinking is at this point.
Good morning, Glenn Bart from SKN Newsline. Investment of this nature really is taking a risk, as most major projects are. For example, I can think of the Frigate Bay development area. That was a risk that was taken. It paid off. What I'm trying to find, though, at this point in time, for such a major creative project, because it's in a way kind of artistic, apart from the financial investment components, have you been able to complete the necessary due diligence on the investors and the various parties that might be involved? And what have you found so far in that regard? And secondly, what considerations have you all given to the potential social impact that this project could have on the rest of Nevis, either by one, interaction from the zone and the rest of Nevis, or perhaps non-interaction, depending on how this whole thing pans out. So the social component I would like to hear about as well.
I just wanted to mention something very quickly, because Mr. Bart, you did mention that something like this is a risk. Of course, the Premier would have also mentioned a while ago that there are some unfinished projects on the island in Nevis, and of course there's some in St. Kitts as well. And the issue has been a lot of the times with these unfinished projects is because a lack of enough funds. So people may have run out, the investors may have run out of money. But if we looked at the Act in Section 5, Section 5C, it says here that the zone developer shall demonstrate that it has or has organized the capability, financial and technical capacity, and other qualifications needed to develop and operate the special sustainability zone. So in essence, and it also speaks to an economic analysis as well. So in essence, this zone is different in a lot of ways because the developers or the potential investors must demonstrate that they have the financial capacity to start and to complete this project. And so I believe that you mentioned the risk factor. Yes, there is the risk factor, but the Act prescribes that they must have and demonstrate that financial capacity, and that is also part of the vetting process that would have gone on in terms of who is involved in this project. I just wanted to mention that.
Mr. Bart, subject to comments from my colleagues, you mentioned risk, and you know it's interesting because my mind immediately went back to a stakeholder session we had. I think it was with the churches, and one person who made a comment said, you know, they wanted guarantees. Where are the guarantees? And my good colleague and cousin, the deputy premier, said that the only guarantee in life is death. Perhaps a harsh answer, but entirely accurate. Projects bring risk. And you mentioned Frigate Bay. That's an example of a project that really has succeeded. You mentioned and has built out over the years. You mentioned Four Seasons. Well, I would mention Four Seasons. That's a project that was fraught with risk, but that has benefited over the years. And so there are others on the other side, meaning on the other side of the line, projects that have been attempted that have not succeeded. So oftentimes when we're in leadership position, Mr. Bart, we're having to debate with ourselves, which side of the line do you fall on? Do you govern in a way which is entirely risk averse? Because you and I both know that the only way to find out what's in the ocean is to leave the shore. And so if we say we don't want any risk, we will constantly stay in the position that we're in. When Four Seasons came 35 years ago, it was a risk. And I am told, and I recall in my youth then, that some of the arguments, people say, oh, you know, foreigners coming to take over, you won't be able to use the beach, you can't go pick coconut anymore, we can't catch crab. But look at the Four Seasons now. Which of us could, with any justification, could stand up and say it has not been good, not only for Nevis, but for the entire country? So you're right, but I think government has to take what I would call calculated risks. We have to do, as the Deputy Premier has said, look at the information and come to the best decision we can make, given the information that we have. You mentioned due diligence, and that keeps popping up. What I would say is that insofar as we have conducted ourselves as government, when we undertake due diligence, we are undertaking due diligence which is seeking to determine whether the individuals who are proposing a project have any criminal backgrounds, are involved in any criminal activity, have been accused of any criminal activity, are involved in fraud, and any accusations of that nature. Our due diligence does not extend into things like, you know, what their sexual orientation is, what religion they are, whether they're Muslim or Hindu. Because our view is that once people come to Nevis and they arrive in Nevis with a project proposal, it is our job to evaluate the merits or demerits of the proposal that is in front of us. And so that is what, as a government, we have been trying to do, to the best of our abilities, to look at what is proposed. Will this bring jobs? You say you want to be tax-free. Well, what are the benefits that you anticipate Nevis will get? That's the type of analysis that we have to engage in. And once our checks come back and there are no criminality or allegations of those of that nature, terrorism, involvement with terrorists and that kind of thing, we feel that we are able to engage with those individuals on the merits of the project. Naturally, if there are red flags in terms of who the individuals are, then we disengage. And I would just remind you, Mr. Bart, that the island of Nevis has had a financial services industry now for over 40 years. We do that every day. So due diligence, background checks, know your client, those are standard operating procedures for Nevis. All right? I would also say here that the gentleman, Mr. Jensen, who is the investor and promoter of this project, is a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis and has been a citizen for almost 10 years. That therefore tells me that he would have had to go through a rigorous background and due diligence check, because citizenship applications have to go through impacts in Barbados, which of course has involvement from the UK, US, Canada, and the EU. So he would have been run through all of those databases in order to determine whether or not any adverse findings, and so clearly they have been none. So I just want to make that very clear insofar as we are concerned. Now, you asked a very important question about the potential social impact. It is always hard for someone to answer some things that are obviously in the future. Again, all I can do is point to what little precedent we have. And we have a Four Seasons resort. I smiled inwardly when Mr. Hanley was saying about Gingerland, some people living outside and some people, rich people living inside. The reason I smile? Because the Four Seasons is one of the wealthiest enclaves, not only in St. Kitts and Nevis, but probably in the Caribbean region. There are billionaires who have homes at the Four Seasons. Billionaires. I have never heard that there's any friction or any confusion or any difficulty. We live here in Nevis as one people. We engage as one people. And I have not heard any problems that have arisen, because I think part of that is our own outlook as Nevisians. Nevisians are very proud people. Even if all we have is a one-room house, nobody's better than us. That is our philosophy. And that is how we operate. And so we are not a people generally who are grudging and who are upset that somebody has a home or has a car. We are people who are interested in working hard for what we want and achieving what we want. And so those tensions that may exist elsewhere, we have not seen those tensions exhibit themselves here. And I can only look again to the best example that we have. Not a perfect example, but the best example that we have is the Four Seasons. The Four Seasons has, I think, over 80 homes. Some people just think of the Four Seasons as the hotel, but there are over 80 homes. Some of them, in fact, I spoke to a homeowner down there recently. He has thus far spent $60 million on his home. That's the kind of people we have living here in Nevis. But we don't see any tension. We don't see or hear any difficulty. People live together, in harmony. So unless something dramatic was to change, I can't be a soothsayer and predict, but I would say that the nature of the people of Nevis is that we have always been welcoming, and we've always felt that we're equal to anyone. And I don't see that the problems that are being hyped up and being suggested are, in my view, not consistent with the examples that we would have seen. Wealthy people, not so wealthy people on this island have all been welcomed. We live together as one people. And that is the best answer I can give you. We, as government, will certainly guard religiously against anything that militates against that. In fact, and the cabinet would bear me out, that one of the early debates and discussions we had was about access. We were quite adamant. The people of Nevis must have access. And when I say access, I mean access whenever they want to go into this area. We understand there must be security concerns, but the idea was that there ought to be no undue burden on our people moving back and forth. And that has been agreed, that has been settled, and so there's no issue. You saw the heritage sites, access to heritage sites, maintenance of heritage sites. Church group wants to go, school children want to go, you and I, Mr. Bart, want to go and have a beer. So when you do those things, access. So things like those are ready because we have a model. As I said, not a perfect example, but we have a model, which is the Four Seasons, and we know how that works. And so the idea here really is to ensure that whatever we do, we don't create any us and them. We create a harmonious community. I would say one other thing, which I don't think I pointed it out earlier in terms of the economic impact. In our meeting with the hoteliers, we know that the hotels in St. Kitts and Nevis suffer from seasonality. In fact, in Nevis, some of the smaller properties tend to close during the summer period. And they do so because travelers that we depend on aren't coming this side. They're going to Europe or wherever else they're going. And one of the points that we perhaps have overlooked in this discussion is that if you have residents within that zone who are here most of the time, it adds to the people who would then consume at the restaurants, at the hotels, etc. around the island. So I remember speaking to my good friend Richie Lupinacci. I hope he doesn't mind me calling his name, because they have this famous pig roast on a Wednesday. And I said, well, imagine you have people now who are coming not just Wednesdays during the season, but every Wednesday to this pig roast, because more people leads to more business. And that has been one of the very real difficulties for small businesses here. That notwithstanding the quality of their service or the quality of their product, the market is just so small that if you're selling great barbecue chicken, you're still competing with the other 100 people who are selling barbecue chicken to the same 1,000 people. And so that is really part of it, expanding the market, growing the number of consumers, making it possible for our small business community in particular to leverage that and to become medium and large businesses. And the hotel sector, I thought that point was well received when we talked about the fact that we can remove seasonality now. And what does that mean? It means that our hotel workers are working throughout the year. You don't have these 2-month vacation that they're forced to take, that our people have ongoing turnover. And then for the government, that we're hopefully collecting our little tax on an ongoing basis. So I think there are a number of ways to look at this whole idea of development. So thank you for the questions. Do you have any more questions for us?
Before the
could
next,
Yeah.
before the next person come, I wanted to add to respond very quickly to Mr. Bart's last question. Potential for social impact. I want us to look at that from perhaps from a different angle. We have, I believe it's this month, we are celebrating the month of the elderly. And I think that this development can create some opportunity for us to expand some of our social safety nets. We have some programs that our elderly benefit from: free water, free electricity. Of course, I believe that they also receive free medication and all of those kind of things. I feel that with such a development, it creates the possibility for the government to perhaps be able to have much more available, quote unquote, disposable income to assist more people. We have as well here on the island of Nevis, and by extension the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, our sporting community, our young people. Many are involved in different type of sports: football, cricket, tennis, all kind of things. I believe that it also creates an opportunity for the government to perhaps expand on some of those programs. The cultural exchange, and those kind of things. Of course, we expect that there would be persons from within the zone themselves going out into the various communities, restaurants, enjoy our nightlife, our cuisine, and those kind of things. So we expect that there would be those type of benefits. But I am looking at it that some of what the government is trying to do in terms of some of our social program and creating some of our safety nets, I believe that it creates an opportunity for us to perhaps expand on some of those programs and to create more opportunity for persons to benefit from some of those social safety programs. I just wanted to add that to what the Premier would have said, and also the Deputy Premier as well.
And I just wanted to add quickly as well, in terms of the social impact as well, there's another dimension of the social impact that we can also add. We can look at the disposable income. Minister Brand spoke about the disposable income for the government. We can talk about the disposable income for persons, divisions and residents here. And of course, the standard of living. The Premier would have used the excellent example of the Four Seasons. And we know what the Four Seasons has done to its employers and in terms of what they have earned. A lot of persons who work at Four Seasons say they are where they are in terms of whether the land or the house or the cars that they have bought because they have worked at the Four Seasons. So this is now an excellent opportunity to provide more opportunities in terms of employment and income to Nevisians and residents. And it is no secret that Little Nevis, the standard of living in Little Nevis and in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, is second to none in the Caribbean. And this development can actually add to that in terms of how it could actually increase our standard of living based on the kind of economic impact that we saw that was provided here. So that also, that dimension of the social impact we can also speak to.
Morning. Vernon George, Observer. Mr. Brown, I got a question for you. Some years ago, you had a project proposed for the same south of the island. Is that one of the hotels that's going to be proposed in the zone?
I have not been approached to have that hotel be a part of that development.
Mr. Premier, before the SSZ or Mr. Johnson approach you with the project, have any local business owner approach you or the government to have such a development on the south of the island?
No, I'm not aware that we had any approach, Mr. George, about a development on the south of the island. No.
Mr. Premier, as of last year, December, the national debt stand at $483 million. What are your plans to bring down the national debt? And do you see the SSZ and the fact that the developers are actually getting their hands involved with many of the projects that the government plan to do? Do you see that as a bailout for the government?
I wouldn't call it a bailout. I would call it a build-out. The reality is, Mr. George, that you're right. We have a high, and I don't think it's national debt. I think you're speaking to the island debt.
Island.
Right. We have a high island debt. It's higher than I'm comfortable with. But we also must remember that we just went through a 2-year period of COVID when the island was practically closed down. And this government incurred debt during that period in order to ensure, for example, that our public servants were paid in full and on time during that period of time. The debt has been incurred. I think the question for us really is, what have we done with that debt? And when we look around the island, I think the evidence is quite clear what we have done. We have also been capable of servicing our debt, which is always part of the concern. It is not always whether you have debt, but whether or not you can service that debt. But we realize, Mr. George, and your question is an important one, because we realize that debt is a concern. But how do we ultimately bring down debt? I think we bring down debt by growing the economy. We can't tax our people to get out of debt. We have to grow ourselves out of debt. And part of that is why we're talking about large-scale investments such as Destiny, because the revenue, and we saw the projections, and that was done by Oxford Economics, the economic projection. When we look at the projections in terms of revenue to the government, in terms of turnover for the government, in terms of the ability to do certain things for the government, and then if we can also get Destiny, as we have negotiated with them, to partner with us on the build-out of the hospital and healthcare on the island, to partner with us on the build-out of the Long Point port, then those two become self-sustaining projects. The port, for example, we can anticipate a significant flow of revenue and a significant flow of business activity coming from our port at Long Point, because there's room there where we can expand it. In fact, far more room than even, say, on St. Kitts where there's a port up at Burdock. So the truth is that you've highlighted the problem of debt, and we are trying to resolve that problem by growth, by economic expansion, and by moving the island forward. Because, again, I say, if we continue to do the same thing over and over, we can't expect that we're going to get any results other than the same results that we've got over and over. So that is pretty much where we are on that issue. But I think that you should be comforted, and the public should be comforted, that we are currently servicing our debt and dealing with it as a responsible government would.
Mr. Premier, earlier you mentioned about the government will pay the developer in case the project is no longer fruition. Who's going to pay, the federal government or the local government? Seeing the fact that the law was a federal act, who will actually pay the money? Would it be the local or the federal?
So again, the way the provision is designed, Mr. George, is really, it will look at the party that's in breach. So the party that has committed this breach. So take, for example, the SSZ legislation. In truth, only the federal government can repeal that legislation because it is national legislation. So if the federal government were to go in and to repeal that legislation, then the liability would fall there. So the issue really has to do with a question of which party is more culpable. But I do think, if I recall, Madam Legal Advisor, there was something about joint and several liability. Right. So both governments could potentially also be on the hook for any payment if there is a repeal or repudiatory breach of the agreements for this Destiny proposed development. So that is the position, but as again, I went at great pains to explain currently what the framework, the suggested framework is for any such breaches and the penalties associated with those breaches.
Next question is for Mr. Evelyn. Does Destiny or any affiliates of Destiny own any land in Nevis besides the salt or the island? And how are they going to be able to facilitate the land swaps that they are proposing?
Well, to my knowledge, Mr. George, I don't know that Destiny own land elsewhere. I guess that research may have to be done at the registry, but I'm not aware that they own land anywhere else. I know that they have been looking for lands elsewhere to accommodate the swap, but at this present time, I'm not aware that they own land anywhere else on the island.
Last question for the Premier. I am not from Nevis, but I lived there for some years now. Speaking to a few elders in Nevis, they gave me a history of Nevis elections. You continuously boast of your party has won 16 out of the 17 elections held from Sings. But every single local election, the Premier in Nevis has lost because of some land sega. Do you believe you will suffer the same fate as a few persons in the society is against that SSZ?
Mr. George, there was once a man who walked the earth called Jesus. And he was perfect. He was God's son. He came here to save you and I. And you know what people did with him? Crucified him. In fact, when Pontius Pilate had an old criminal called Barabbas in front of him and had blameless, pure Jesus next to Barabbas, and he asked the crowd who he should save, they said, give us Barabbas and crucify Jesus. We live in a democracy, and in a democracy, differences of opinion exist. Nobody in a democracy has 100% support. That doesn't happen. You're asking me to predict whether or not we will lose an election because of the SSZ? I think ultimately my response is always that is a matter for the people. My job as a Premier of Nevis and the job of this cabinet is to make the best decisions that we can for the people of Nevis. Not everyone is going to agree with those decisions, but ultimately we feel that if over time those decisions are to yield the necessary benefits, then our legacy must not only be holding on to office, it must also be the satisfaction that we have served the people of Nevis and we have done so to the best of our ability. So we are making decisions here which hopefully will benefit this island over the long term. I want Mr. Brand's grandchildren and my grandchildren to be in a Nevis which is full of opportunity. And if this cabinet can be remembered for its small role in creating that foundation, I think we would have done well. So I am not too concerned about losing elections. I always say, when elections come and Big Blue rolls out, then we see where barley grows. Mr. Hanley could tell you he has felt the power of Big Blue. So I just want to make that very clear. Okay?
Good morning, Elke Hewlett, Department of Information. You said the agreement with the developers will be made public. Can you explain that process? Like, at which point will it be made public? So is there room for change to said agreement anywhere in the parliamentary process once that agreement has been approved by the NIA? What has been the general sentiment from the various stakeholder groups and any other engagements you've had thus far? How will the NIA determine if it's getting the proposed revenue allotment from Destiny in relation to profit share? And finally, who will determine if Destiny has met its development benchmarks, and to what extent will the Planning and Environment Department be involved, if at all, especially in the construction phase? Thank you.
I'm being nominated, Ms. Hewlett. The feedback from the stakeholder groups, as one can expect, has been mixed. What I've found in all of our engagements thus far with the public is that those who are opposed are very loud. They're the ones at the microphone. Those who are in support tend to be less quiet. Colleagues, am I correct with that? Tend to be less so. And it therefore sends a sort of mixed signal, if you will, because you have a few people who have been very, very loud, but you have a large group of people who are the ones quietly calling, seeking information, sending messages of encouragement, saying to press on, Nevis needs work, and I'm praying for you. So it's an interesting mix, because we understand that Nevis is an interesting place. A lot of our people don't want to sit in the front chair and be in the front of the room, but that does not mean that anybody can fool them. And just last night, I had to speak to a few people who came, who got on the mic and started to tell us what the people of Nevis want. And I had to tell them, speak for themselves. Do not speak for the people of Nevis, because people are saying different things, as one would expect in a democracy. It's not just stakeholder meetings. All of us up here are members of the community. So I have been out, I've been to the barber shop, I've been to the local eateries, I've been to the local bars, and the sentiment that I've had in the main has been overwhelmingly positive. I was in Gingerland the other day, some youngsters up there say, stop all the talking and start the project. We want work. We own truck, we own backhoe, we want to get to work, right? So there's a lot of hand-wringing and pontificating, but at the end of the day, we have to listen to everyone, not just those who are on social media or grabbing the microphone to make the most noise. We have to listen to everyone. So I'll just make that point. You say about the agreement. The truth is that the agreement, like any other legislation passed through Parliament, can be amended because it's a parliamentary process. We have had experiences, certainly even in this current Parliament, where opposition has made suggestions and recommendations, and we have gone through that. It is my hope that when this agreement does reach to the public, that the opposition, which has already been briefed by us on some of the aspects of it, those that we're able to brief them on, based on what aspects may have already been agreed, that those opposition members would be in a very good position to make their own recommendations and really to see how we could strengthen what it is we're seeking to do. So the short answer is yes, that agreement must be subject to the usual parliamentary process like any other bill that's debated. Well, it has to be, like every bill that goes. Any bill that is presented for first reading goes public. So that is published in the usual course, and no doubt the opposition will publish it. We as well will publish it, but it goes to the process like any other piece of legislation. The usual process is a bill is introduced for first reading, the parliament then adjourns. That bill then becomes public domain. And then we go back at some later date for second and third reading. That's the usual process. It's during the debate on the second and third reading that changes and amendments could be made. All right? But in the interim, you get a lot of recommendations, suggestions, and even now, long before we've gone to the parliament, we're already getting recommendations and suggestions. Right? We've had a number of people waiting, and I believe I can disclose it publicly. I've had, for example, communication from people like Charles Wilkin, King's Counsel, who has sent communication to say, make some suggestions as to what he thinks we ought to do. So we're taking the views and opinions on board, not only those who are talking in the town halls and the stakeholder, but also individuals who are basically offering their expertise and their opinions to us, and all of that will be taken on board. You asked about profit share, Ms. Hewlett, a wonderful question, one that we've agonized over, because we know the idea of profit is a strange idea sometimes. What we have proposed is that we must have control mechanisms so that any financial statements from Destiny must be subject to our audit and investigation if necessary. So we are saying to them that I think it was Ronald Reagan used to say trust but verify. So we will trust that your numbers are correct, but we have the right to verify that those numbers are correct. Because over the long term, it's that profit share that the people of Nevis will be looking to. And that for us is very important. So we are building those sort of control mechanisms so that every site can have some confidence in the process. You asked about oversight. The SSE legislation, I think is at section 9, talks about an oversight body, independent oversight body. And I have publicly made my commitment, even though the legislation said that the Premier may establish, so it gives the discretion, I have publicly committed that we shall establish an oversight body. So it is the oversight body now, which is really the entity that is going to be the monitoring mechanism for any zone that we see on the island of Nevis. And the Prime Minister has a similar authority on St. Kitts to do that. So if you have regard to section 9 of the legislation, and I have publicly said, Ms. Hewlett, that it was, in my opinion, an oversight on our part when we were in the Parliament, that we did not insist that instead of saying the Prime Minister or the Premier may, we should have insisted that say shall. But I have gone on record, and I go on record now again to say that even though it says may, it is our intention to set up such a body in Nevis. And we have already written to the members opposite, asking them to nominate someone to that oversight committee. So we're involving the opposition at the very outset of this. So I just want to make that clear. So they have responded. The response that I got was basically to say they wanted more information, which I think is fair. So we now have to deal with meeting with them and offering them whatever information they require. We did outline that we didn't want simply people who were political activists. We wanted people who could bring something. So engineers, we listed out a number of professions: engineering, project planning, finance, etc., people of that nature. But we anticipate having a wide body of individuals who can really act as an oversight committee for the purposes not only of this zone, but naturally of any other zone that may develop in Nevis, if indeed we were to go down that road. Any other questions for us? Yeah.
I just spoke of other zones, which is where I was going in this next question. It seemed to me that you would not want to have another zone that is in competition with what is being proposed now, if that goes forward. But you must have an idea from the concept of development of Nevis, what other kinds of zones that you would like to see being developed on the island. So perhaps you can give us some enlightenment as to where the Nevis Island administration, as it is known, contemplating future development plans, perhaps under a sustainability zone. You can deal with that for us, please.
Mr. Bart, I did confirm last night that we've had some additional approaches from potential investors about zones. We have not really advanced. The truth be told, we have been very focused on this because this development is really so significant that we thought that it warranted the focused attention of the cabinet. In terms of other zones, one I think suggested that it could be a sort of tech startup space, like a park, a tech park, which would be an interesting concept for us to look at, but we're really not there yet. And we really have not engaged and explored those possibilities. I should tell you that at current, the administration has not sat as a cabinet to determine, well, what we will accept and what we will not accept. It is still very early days. This legislation was only passed in August. And let us also remember that it is not every development or developer who may want to do a zone. People may also come and they just want to do what I may call an ordinary development. So we are open for business, as I like to say. We invite people who have an interest to step forward. But right now we have been preoccupied with this particular project to determine whether or not, having had the consultations, it is something that we can move forward with.
Ms. Budgeon once more, Von Radio. I understand that the NIA may profit from this project and some of the monies will go towards the hospital wing. But weren't we promised that the hospital project would have started earlier this year? And weren't funds would have already been allocated for the completion of the project? And if the Destiny project doesn't happen, how will the hospital wing be completed? Is there a plan B? Thank you.
Ms. Budgeon, Ms. Budgeon, thanks for the question. And you're right. We did say, and in fact, I think I said so more than once, that we wanted to resume the hospital construction this year. The short answer is that despite our best intentions, we had some financial constraints that we had to deal with. And so while we had an amount that was budgeted for the hospital to start, we erred on the side of caution and decided that we would hold for now. The intention, therefore, would be to get to the hospital at a later date. We have not shied away from our commitment to have this project completed in this term in office, and we intend to do that. Destiny provides an opportunity to assist in the build-out, not just of the hospital, but of healthcare facilities on the island, because it is their intention to use those facilities as well. And of course, if we can partner with them, then we'll go down that road. But if we can't partner with them, then we will have to fund the hospital the way we fund anything else. We'll have to incur debt in order to proceed with the hospital. We are exploring all opportunities and all options, but for now, we also are bringing to the people the possibility that a partnership with Destiny can give us this important project that all of us, I think, want for the benefit of the people of Nevis. So the short answer is that we are committed to having this project done. The funding for that project is not yet secured. We can do it in partnership with Destiny, but if Destiny doesn't happen, then we will have to go to plan B, as you've described it, which is to incur debt to have the hospital completed. So we are trying to avoid debt if we can. And that is why we put the hospital completion in the whole mix of this proposal, to say that it was important for us to get Destiny to assist us and partner with us to finish that hospital and to build out not just the hospital, but infrastructure. The Minister of Health is here, and I'm sure she'll be very happy if we can build out the health infrastructure on the island, and if she doesn't have to worry about where the money is going to come from to do it, because we have some dedicated resources in that regard. So that has been our approach, and I, for one, know the importance of this project, and I know that when we are ready, have the money, we can then come to you and to the press and say, listen, come January 1, come March 1, we know we can start because we have the necessaries in place. My understanding, Ms. Budgeon, is that the build out that we have seen is 18 to 24 months. That is the estimates that we have to complete that project.
This afternoon also, good afternoon all. Just a follow-up question. So we were looking at the risk for both the NIA and the developers for Destiny. So in that you mentioned that the risk for the NIA or for us would be 2 times the capital expenditure and the cost of real estate, which means 5 years from now, as you mentioned, it could increase, etc. So understanding that this is the formula that would be used to calculate our risk on our end, what was the formula used to arrive at 75 million US dollars? Secondly, you made mention of the due diligence, the checks on the proposed developers, and you mentioned that Mr. Hansen's or Jansen's has been, he mentioned as well last night that he has been a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis. Well, the slide said 7 years. And he became a citizen through the CBI program. I think all of us here and those who are listening can agree with me that the CBI program, even over the last 40 years, has had some very shady characters. And the due diligence process with that CBI program has not been as robust as it ought to have been. I'm seeing where now some changes are being made to the due diligence process. So my question is, what is the NIA or the federal government going to do to ensure that there's an adequate due diligence done on the developers for this project, and not just to rely on the due diligence that was done when he became a citizen? Not assuming that's what you're going to do, but not to rely on the due diligence that was done when he first became a citizen. Secondly, I think it was Minister Evelyn who made mention of the developers. Well, you made mention of a clause or a section in the Act that says that the developers shall be required to demonstrate their financial capacity to develop this project. My question is, who or which agency or which body will ensure that they do have the financial capacity? So who is going to be responsible for going to ensure that these people can actually deliver? And I guess that really ties into the due diligence. Thank you.
Mr. Cornelius, yeah, you're right. The second question is really a very similar question. It's part and parcel of the same thing. Who determines? The cabinet determines. The cabinet gets whatever reports, and the cabinet determines whether or not it's satisfied. That is the way it has always been. I think, however, you might have misunderstood my reference to Mr. Jensen being a citizen. I wasn't saying that we were relying solely on the fact that he was a citizen. I was merely buttressing the point. If you recall, I started by saying that as an administration, due diligence is nothing new for us. We do due diligence on a daily basis. We have a thriving financial services sector. We have international banks, insurance companies, trust companies. All of them we have to do due diligence for. So it is not unusual for us. In fact, that's daily business on our part. Now, in relation to Mr. Jensen, as I've indicated, there are no adverse findings about criminality or anything of that nature. And so what we would normally look for in terms of flags, we have not had any of those flags. I then went on to say that in addition, let us remember that he has been a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis, certainly, as you said, the slide said over 7 years. So over 7 years. So the truth is that that was simply a secondary reference by me to say that he must have gone through that due diligence process for citizenship as well. Not in substitution for, but certainly as well. Now, you say about bad actors, and we've certainly had our share. I agree with you on that. But you would also, I think, admit that we have tightened up over the years, and we keep tightening up over the years, and we keep adjusting over the years our due diligence processes. In fact, when I was at the federal government, I think that is when we started to use impacts in Barbados. And impacts, as I said, is an important agency because it involves major Western governments as part and parcel of those checks. So we're running through things through Interpol, we're running through things through impacts. If it's an American, we're running things through the FBI, etc. Right? Scotland Yard and those agencies. Now, I am not so naive to suggest to you that with all the checks in the world, you're going to get somebody who is unblemished. And let us also face it, that somebody could be unblemished today when the checks are done, but decide to do some foolishness a year from now or 5 years from now. That is true of everybody in this room. So all we can do again as government is apply our best judgment on the information that we have at the time when we're asked to apply that judgment. We can't do anything more. So if, for example, at the time when somebody is approved for a development, that person has an unblemished record, but then 5 years from now that person were to commit a crime, I don't think it is fair to fault the government or its due diligence, because we would not have known and could not have known that 5 years hence somebody would engage in criminal activity. So we have to make the best assessment on the information that we have in front of us at that point in time. And so I just want to make it very clear that when I referenced the citizenship by investment, this was a sort of ancillary, but to support the fact that this individual has gone through a due diligence process by us, and certainly would have gone through that by the federal government and the CBI program as well.
The question about the formula.
So in terms of a formula, there was no formula that was applied on the other side, because we wanted the benefit of knowing what a fixed number would look like. So we have had, and as I said, that is a matter that is still under negotiation. The proposal was a fixed figure. I think they started at one figure. We have had one adjustment thus far on that figure, but that is really the discussion. So I think the formula was on the other side because of the timelines and the performance requirements. There are no timelines on our side, and there are no performance requirements on our side. So put differently, once we sign off on this, once it goes through the parliament and it's passed, our obligations insofar as that zone is concerned only then move to oversight. We don't have any, as I explained earlier, any money that we must spend on that. So there are really no performance requirements on our side. And so all the performance indicators were on their side of the line. And the question really was, if we were to nullify the zone, repeal the legislation, at what point? Do we do it at year 1, year 5, year 20? And what would their expenditure and investment have been at year 1, year 5, year 20, as the case may be? So that is why it was done on their side in terms of a formula. On our side, there was no need to look at a formula. So we wanted the comfort of a number, and that is what we've been working with.
Just a quick follow-up, please. So you made mention of the due diligence, and mine went back to the independent oversight body. And a comment that the Prime Minister made earlier this year when he said, as part of the checks and balances for the CBA program, what they're going to do now is continued checks, continued due diligence, because you did make the point that today you might have a very clean record, but tomorrow or next week you could be charged for whatever, fraud or whatever. So will there be continued due diligence, and would that be the responsibility of the independent oversight body? And I'm asking that because of the risks involved in this project and the significance of this project. If I may, I believe a project of this magnitude, which has been compared in some parts to the CBA program, I think would warrant continued due diligence. Thank you.
What I'll say, Mr. Cornelius, is that that is an excellent suggestion. It is certainly something that we can try to incorporate. I don't think we'll have any difficulty with that. So thank you for that suggestion. Moving forward, of course, we are taking all the ideas on board, and where they're good ideas, we try to take those forward as part of our discussion. So thank you for that.
Yes, just to follow up with my two earlier questions to Minister Evelyn and Premier Premier Brantley. You mentioned that you will change the Election Act, not the Constitution. That's even worse because the Election Act is inside of the Constitution, and we know that we have election laws already that says people should vote where they live. And if you cannot stop 100 people from Gingerland from voting in St. John's, how are you going to convince us, the people of Nevis, that you're going to stop 10,000 residents in Destiny from voting elsewhere throughout Nevis? And we must remember the citizens in Destiny will be up to 10,000 in the first instance, but those 10,000 citizens will have children. So once this project is at its ending time, or it's 20 years from now, you said, we can have up to 20,000 citizens of Destiny inside of Nevis. And if the trend continues that you said Nevis, the most thing Nevis export is people. If our people continue to leave and Destiny continues to grow, then over time we can very well end up with a new premier of Nevis, Premier Jensen, and they can run for office. They will be citizens. They will be able to run. And my question is, how do you intend to change the electoral laws or electoral act or constitution, whatever you want to call it, to say to us in Nevis that citizens inside of Nevis will not be able to vote or run for office? And my follow-up with Minister Evelyn, you said that, well, you didn't answer my question. I asked you what is the big plan for Gingerland, because persons are living in dilapidated conditions. What you spin that and said that I said that persons are living there, but people know what I'm talking about. I don't mean people are living. People have their beautiful homes where they are living in, excellent homes and so. But I meant the public infrastructure that you are in charge of are dilapidated, and we are living in Gingerland. You see them every day. You drive past the areas every day. We all know what is happening in Gingerland. So can you explain to us your big plan for the constituency of Gingerland, Mr. Evelyn? I'm trying to help you now. Let us know your big plan.
Mr. Hanley, you must, when you speak, you must qualify what you say, and you must do not say things and think that people are going to think what you say or you didn't say. If you want to qualify a statement, you have to qualify the statement from the beginning. So if you stood there at the mic and you said that the people of Gingerland are living in dilapidated conditions, that is what they heard. So I'm not the one who said it. You're the one who said it, right? And it goes back to what you were saying regarding the public markets, the playfield at Hard Times. You spoke about the playfield, the court at Hard Times as well. There are plans afoot to remedy those situations. We have plans to rehabilitate the public market. We have plans for lighting of the field at Hard Times. As a matter of fact, when I was there the last time, when I said I sponsored that tournament, I spoke to many of the persons who were there. I explained to them the situation regarding the situation, why the lights have been delayed. There has been an ongoing situation or global problem with regards to transformers. And that is one of the reasons why we have had a delay in the lighting of some of our playfields on the island. There are plans, and I remember that Minister Liebert at one of our town hall meetings made the commitment for the work to be done at the Hard Court in Gingerland. And so things are in the works, and we just have to wait for the appropriate funding to be in place for us to continue those situations. You asked about my big plans for Gingerland. I mean, things have been happening since I've been there as the constituency rep. One of the big things that happened is right there in the heart of Gingerland, the David Freeman Center of Excellence, where over $1 million was spent. And of course, it was all spent to decentralize what happens in terms of cultural activities. It's a state-of-the-art center that we have there in Gingerland. We have seen improvements to the Gingerland Secondary School. The Gingerland, as I always boast now, the Gingerland Secondary School look like a university campus now. We've had the wing that was built there, the TVET wing that was built there. We continue to see improvements to the infrastructure in terms of our road network. We continue to see persons, private individuals who are actually investing. And if the environment was not created by the Nevis Island administration, then these private persons would not be investing. You spoke about the health center. We have had plans as well to have the health center go back to its original positions, but that again needs money. And so now that we are trying to bring a project to the island that will bring more money to the NIA, that will ensure that our big plans that we have, not only for Gingerland, but for the rest of Nevis, can be rolled out. Oh, yes. How could I forget housing? We just recently did a housing development down in Rices, and I am so proud to say that for the housing development down in Rices, I think is 90% of them are single mothers. And we will be rolling out another housing development in New River. That should be starting in the new year. So the big plans are coming together. And once destiny comes to light, to reality, the big plans will roll out even more.
Mr. Hanley, you went back to the question about the Constitution. And all I can say in the interest of time is I answered you already, because I don't know what else to tell you. I've tried to explain. You've come back. Basically, you've asked the same question again. And you've started now with a bunch of what ifs and what ifs and what ifs. If I can be allowed a moment of levity, I see the Commonwealth has advertised for fiction writers. And I think it's a great, great thing because the prize money looks quite good. If I had your ability, I would definitely write something. Because if we go down a road of what ifs, we'll be here all day, all night, because everything you say, I will then respond and say, but what if this, and what if that, and what if the other? So I've tried to explain to you as best as I can what the plan is. Your what ifs, I can't go down that rabbit hole with you. So I'll just leave that alone, but you should check out that Commonwealth fiction writing essay competition. I believe you could win it easily. And if you do, share the money with me, because I made the suggestion.
I just want to know what type of technology would be put in place for the locals to receive the payment from the profits of Destiny? to the legal, sorry,
Go ahead.
to the legal advisor, if she could answer any questions. What role did Ms. Dawn Cotto play in shaping the SSZ laws? The reason why I asked the question is she practices law in the federation. So I wanted to know if she had any input in the laws. And last one is what brand of hotels, because you guys mentioned free hotels. Do you have any idea of what brand of hotels will be coming to the zone? Sorry.
Okay, shall I deal with all of them? Okay. In respect of Dr. Dawn Cotto, she's part of their team, but the whole drafting of the law, as you know, was done at the federal level. So that's a question for the Attorney General. I do not know who advised him.
In terms of the technology, I think you asked about the technology that will be used for Nivision to be, that technology is still being worked on. I don't think that a decision has been made on that yet, so that is still being worked on.
In relation to the brands, as Minister of Tourism, I'm quite interested in that. At this point, we've been given a list of brands that they are having a conversation with, but we are reluctant to get into that discussion in terms of a public disclosure because we are not yet sure where those discussions are. I can say that nothing has yet been signed. What I can tell you is we have insisted that those brands have to be luxury brands. So that much I can say, that we intend to maintain what Nevis has developed as a luxury destination for luxury travelers because we think that those are the higher impact travel in terms of revenue for the island. Our model continues to be low impact, high yield insofar as tourism is concerned. So I think at subsequent discussions, Mr. George, I'd be in a much better position to say, well, okay, this brand or that brand, but I wouldn't want to prejudice that conversation, which I know is ongoing at this point. It is growing late, so if there are any more questions, can we wrap up, please?
Two questions. With regards to the development of this zone and the development of the Brantley International Airport, how do you see those two elements meshing together for the further development of Nevis? And then I also recalled some time ago you have been pushing the idea that we have all these economic citizens out there, and perhaps it's time that we approach them with the idea of they perhaps investing in our country. How far have you actually gone with this idea? And is there any structure that you have in pursuing that kind of idea?
Mr. Bart, you asked an interesting question because Mr. Jensen is exactly the kind of person. Mr. Jensen is an economic citizen, and he is, if you will, proof of the theory that I've been advancing for some time now.
Is that a result of actions by the NIA, or is...
I don't know if it's a result of actions, but what I will say is that the NIA has created an environment which is very conducive to investment. And if we can get these economic citizens to invest, it is a very important initiative. Now, when I had suggested this, I suggested that at the federal level, they needed to have a wing, if you will, an arm of the Citizenship by Investment Unit, which was charged with having the database and reaching out to these individuals. In this situation, Mr. Jensen would have reached out to us in terms of bringing a proposal. But when we found out, of course, that he was an economic citizen, it sort of reinforced in my mind that that is, in fact, the way that we ought to go. Because if we have these wealthy people out there who are holding, and incidentally, Mr. Jensen is saying he has had a thing in his passport for 7 years or more than that. So you start to wonder to yourself, well, how many more of these folks are out there who can bring substantial investment dollars into the country? But so far, those pleas have not fallen on fertile ground, but I'm hopeful that with individuals like him coming, we can then start to see the potential of actually reaching out to our economic citizens. So instead of us scouring the world and trying to find investment, we have some people already have a connection with St. Kitts and Nevis through a passport. Why not encourage them? Why not engage with them? And I don't have their details because we have no CBI office in Nevis, but certainly the Citizenship by Investment Unit in St. Kitts would have those details, and that is why I've advocated. The meshing of the airport and the zone, Mr. Bart, this is a government which is continuously thinking about development, and we're not doing anything that is ad hoc. The airport and the zone go hand in glove because there's no airport facility within the zone. So how are they going to get their people to come into Nevis? How are the visitors to the hotels going to arrive? It's either through RLB or through Van Sammer International Airport. So the synergies, if as these people turn out to be wealthy individuals inside that enclave, lots of wealthy individuals get around the world on private jets. Where are those private jets going to land? Where are they going to park? How are we going to service them? And so the idea behind the airport gels very well with the idea behind this zone. And if it's not this zone, it still gels very well with the idea behind that level of development, because that's what we're ultimately going to need to push the island forward. Invest in infrastructure so that private sector investment can come and feel comfortable in terms of what it is we are doing. So I see the two as being very, very closely connected in terms of just the ongoing investment by us in infrastructure. And what is that investment for? It is to prepare the ground, prepare the environment, so that investors can come and know that they are investing now in an island which has the infrastructure to support what they're doing. So geothermal as well, Minister Brand has reminded me. Because people are coming in, what are they looking for? They want energy, they want water, naturally they need land. If land is available, they need access, air and otherwise, right? In terms of this particular development, they have to produce their own energy and water. But hear what they're now saying. Because 70% of their energy by law has to be renewable, they're saying, can we partner with you to bring geothermal? You know why? Because they want geothermal. When we saw that they were proposing to do a hospital or health facility inside the zone, we said to them, no. Rather than developing one inside the zone, help us develop ours outside the zone. And everybody now could benefit from improved healthcare. When they were talking about the possibility of a port, a commercial cargo port inside the zone, we said no. Spend the money instead and help us develop the Long Point port so that everybody can benefit. So you would use the hospital and we would use it. You would use the port and we would use it. In this case, the airport was already spoken for in terms of financing. But we anticipate that they will use the Nevis airport as well to bring their folks in. And their private jet traffic will no doubt come to the Nevis airport. So I've said all that to say that these things are all strands. They're all interconnected. They're not random activities on the part of a government that is just throwing things out there. We're trying to develop the island in a very systemic way. Systemic is the word or systematic? We're trying to develop it in a systemic and systematic way, right? To move the island forward. So that is what we're doing, and it's all interconnected. Thank you, Mr. Barr. Anything further, colleagues? It's grown late in the day. Okay. I promise next week I'll come back by myself. Next thing, because the fellas up here make the thing too long. So thank you all for being here. Thank you very much, members of the press. For those from St. Kitts, please get back safely. Thank you for the questions and thank you for the engagement. And as I said, we look forward to continuing these very important engagements in relation to the sustainable zone that is proposed for the south of Nevis. Thank you.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
Ready to save while you build? Now you can at Builders Paradise. Yes, shoppers, build up your Value Club points at Builders Paradise. That's right, Value Club members and shoppers, your favorite frequent buyer club is now available at the home of hardware and more. Whether you're laying tiles, painting walls, replacing doors, upgrading windows, or fixing up your home, every purchase at Builders Paradise now earns you Value Club points. Enjoy exclusive benefits like discounts on thousands of items, special savings for seniors, instant deals, quarterly rebates, plus an extra up to 2% off every quarter. Shop more, save more, earn more, only at Builders Paradise. Don't miss out. Start building your rewards today with Value Club at Builders Paradise, because every bolt, board, and brush brings you closer to bigger, better savings. Terms and conditions apply.
Mom, the Christmas cookies are ready. We leave them right here under the tree for...
For Santa or for CIBC Caribbean? 'Tis the season for dreams to come true. Whether it's a house, land, vehicle, or upgrading your home, CIBC Caribbean can support your dreams with the financing you need. Enjoy incredible cashback deals with mortgages and land loans. Plus, your approved loan gives you a chance to win up to US $5,000. Apply now at www.cibccaribbean.com/sweeten the season. Terms and conditions apply.
If you need protection, you need one who you can trust to secure your investment. You need one who'll do you just. TDC Insurance, you're the one that you can trust. TDC Insurance, you're always safe with us.
TDC Insurance is your go-to insurance company for all your insurance needs. We take pride in offering you the best solutions and ensuring our customers are fully satisfied. TDC Insurance, we take good care of you, guaranteeing you peace of mind. You're all